Picture the most expensive building in England. Now fill it with unpaid bills. Add a prince who owes more money than the Navy spends in a year, a bride he's never met, a mistress watching from the wedding party, and a bottle of maraschino brandy that will not survive the afternoon. That's St. James's Palace, London, on the 8th of April, 1795. The heart of the greatest empire on earth. Also a draughty old brick warren, where the chimneys smoke, the drains fail, and the future King of England is about to arrive at his own wedding so drunk that 2 dukes will have to hold him upright at the altar. A place where you could watch the most powerful family in the world in the morning and empty their chamber pots by evening. We're going back there tonight. Not as guests in silk, not as lords with invitations. We're going below stairs, into the corridors the guests never see. One day, one person. Everything they would have seen, smelled, heard, and survived. So, I make these history stories, and honestly, I have no clue if anyone actually sleeps to them, or if you're all just weirdos who like hearing about drunk princes and the servants who had to clean up after them. Either way, subscribe if you want. Get comfortable. Here we go. Here is your problem, and it arrives before you're even properly awake. Today, the Prince of Wales is getting married. Today, 300 of the most dangerous people in England will be inside this palace. And today, of all days, you have a burn on your right hand the size of a shilling, blistered and weeping from a candle snuffer accident 2 nights ago. And if anyone above stairs sees a footman with a bandaged hand carrying wine to the Queen's card table, you will be sent down to the sculleries before the bandage is even off. Not dismissed. Worse than dismissed. Made invisible. Demoted to the rooms where nobody is ever seen again. In this house, being seen doing the work is the crime. Being seen doing it imperfectly is the execution. Your eyes open to darkness. For a moment, maybe half a second, you've forgotten where you are. Then it hits you. The smell. It's not just one smell, it's layers. Tallow smoke from last night's candles, greasy and animal, soaked into the plaster of this attic for 100 years. Damp wool from 6 liveries hanging on pegs, still wet from yesterday's rain. Old beer from the pot under the far bed. Something faintly rotting in the walls. Mouse or rat. Nobody will ever find it. And underneath it all, the bass note of men who wash from a single basin, one after another, in cold water, including you. Welcome to St. James's Palace, London, in the spring of 1795. You're lying on a straw-stuffed pallet in a servant's garret 4 floors above the colour court, under roof beams so low that the tall footman, Withers, has a permanent groove of scar tissue on his forehead. Your name is Thomas Rooke. You're 16 years old, and you arrived here 11 months ago from a village near Swaffham in Norfolk, with exactly 1 spare shirt and a letter from the rector, saying you were honest and could read. Back home, everyone said London would either make you or swallow you. They weren't wrong. They just didn't say it could do both at once. The bells are already going. Not just one church. This is Westminster. You are buried in churches. St. Margaret's, St. Martin in the Fields, whose bells you can pick out now, the way you once picked out your mother's voice across a field. The Abbey itself, further off, a deep bronze pulse you feel in the floorboards more than here. Those bells have been calling this city out of bed for centuries. Today they'll ring for a wedding. They don't know yet what kind of wedding it's going to be. Neither do you. You sit up. The blister on your hand has stuck to the bandage overnight, and peeling your fingers open feels like tearing paper. You bite down on the sound. Withers is still asleep 2 feet away, and the boy from Kent, Nan they call him, is snoring into the wall, and the rule of the garret is the same as the rule of the whole palace. Make no noise that anyone above you has to hear. The floor is cold enough to burn your bare feet. The water in the basin has a skin of grit on it, and it is the temperature of a January river, and you wash your face with your left hand, clumsy, water running down your wrist into your sleeve, because you cannot afford to soak the bandage. Everything today has to be done one-handed, and nobody can ever know. That's the whole day in one sentence. Remember it. Your livery hangs on the 3rd peg, scarlet coat with the royal cipher on the buttons, worth more than everything your family owns put together, and it is not yours. Nothing on your body is yours. The coat belongs to the crown. The powder in your hair belongs to the crown, and by 6:30 this morning even your face will belong to the crown, arranged into the blank, pleasant, seeing-nothing expression that is the actual uniform of your profession. You've practiced it in the dark, eyes soft, mouth still, a face like a closed door. The breeches are cold and slightly damp. The stockings have been darned at the heel so many times, the darn has its own darn. The shoes have buckles you polish every night with a rag and rotten stone until your thumb aches, because Mr. Brand inspects buckles the way a surgeon inspects a wound, and today of all days there will be an inspection at 7, and you would rather be flogged than fail it. Yes, you'd rather be flogged. Flogging ends. Hair powder next. This is a 2-man job, so you wake Nan by pressing your knee into his shoulder, and he does yours and you do his, left-handed, the puff shedding a fine white cloud of scented starch that settles on everything. Tastes of chalk and orange water, gets into your throat and stays there all day. There is a tax on this powder now, a guinea a head per year, paid to His Majesty's government so that His Majesty's servants can look like frosted cakes while carrying His Majesty's soup. The war with France is expensive. Somebody has to pay for it, and the government has decided that somebody is heir. You will earn £8 this year, plus your keep. The coat on your back cost 11. Sit with that a moment. The clothes are worth more than the boy inside them. That is not an accident. That is the point. Down the back stairs, then. 4 flights, wooden, worn into shallow spoons by 200 years of servants' feet. And you go down them fast in the dark because you know them the way you know your own teeth. Hand skimming the rail, past the 3rd step on the 2nd flight that shrieks like a gull if you hit it in the middle. You never hit it in the middle. The back stairs of St. James's are a country of their own, a vertical village of passages and cupboards and half doors cut into panelling, built so that food and coal and washing water and people like you can move through the palace without ever being seen by the people the palace is actually for. There are doors in the staterooms upstairs that the guests think are wool. You have come out of walls. You will spend today inside them. The kitchens hit you like weather. Heat first, a solid wall of it, from the great open ranges where fires have been burning since 4. Then the noise. Cleavers going through bone on the block, a sound like an axe in wet wood. Copper pans, 40 of them, 50, being scoured with sand and vinegar. A scraping shriek that lives in your back teeth. Spit chains rattling. Someone shouting in French, because the pastry side is run by a Frenchman, an émigré who fled the guillotine and now builds sugar temples for the family his own king died envying. And if you think he doesn't feel the strangeness of that, you have never seen his face when the wine goes round. And the smell. Roasting beef fat, sweet and heavy. Fish. This morning turbot and smelts, a cold sea smell laid over the hot one, burnt sugar, onions in butter, blood from the game larder, faint and metallic under everything, like a coin held in the mouth. 300 covers tonight. A supper for the whole court after the ceremony, and this kitchen has been cooking for it for 3 days. You get bread and a mug of small beer, and you eat standing up, in the passage, in the dark, because footmen do not sit in the kitchen and there is nowhere else. The bread is good. Palace bread is always good. It is one of the few honest things in the building. You eat it with your left hand and keep the right one turned in against your hip, in shadow, and Long Meg the vegetable woman sees it anyway, because Meg sees everything, and she looks at the bandage and then at your face, and then she turns away and says nothing. That is the biggest kindness anyone will do you today. Remember her for it. At 7, inspection. Mr. Josiah Brand, yeoman of the cellars, and acting commander of every footman in this wing, stands at the end of the servants' hall with a candle in one hand, and you line up, 14 of you, in a row, like soldiers, which is what you are, in a war, which is what this is. He is a small man, grey, 60 years old, 40 of them spent in this house. He has a voice that never rises and never needs to, and hands so steady that he can fill a glass to a hair's width of the rim while looking at something else. He has buried 2 kings' worth of scandals in his chest and will take all of them to the grave. He walks the line slowly. He looks at buckles. He looks at powder. He looks at fingernails. He stops in front of you. He looks at your right hand. You have practiced this. The bandage is trimmed to nothing, hidden under a white glove borrowed from Withers, 1 size too big, and you have spent an hour learning to carry the hand naturally, loose, alive, as if there were not a coal of pain sitting in the palm of it. Mr. Brand looks at the glove for 3 full seconds. The candle does not move. Somewhere behind you, a boy swallows. Trays only, he says quietly. Left side service. You do not pour tonight. And he moves on. That's it. That's the whole conversation. He knew. He has probably known since it happened, because nothing happens in this house that Mr. Brand does not know, and he has just, in 5 words, saved your place and told you the exact size of the cage you'll spend the day in. You will carry. You will not pour. Because a footman who spills wine on a duchess tonight, of all nights, does not get shouted at. He simply is not there tomorrow, and no one asks where he went. You're late, he says to the line, to all of you, though no one is late. He says it every morning. You've all learned not to argue. Then he sets down the candle and tells you what day this is going to be. The Prince of Wales is marrying Princess Caroline of Brunswick at 8 o'clock this evening, in the Chapel Royal, in this palace, and every one of you will be perfect, because the whole of England will be looking at this house, and the house, says Mr. Brand, does not blink. What he does not say, because he does not have to, because every servant in London already knows it, is this: the groom does not want the bride. The groom has never met the bride until 3 days ago. The groom is marrying her for one reason, and one reason only, which is money, because the Prince of Wales, First Gentleman of Europe, owes £630,000. Say that number slowly. £630,000 in 1795, when a footman lives on 8, when a skilled London craftsman feeds a family on 60 a year. Parliament will pay his debts and raise his income, but only if he marries and produces an heir. So he has agreed, sight unseen, to a first cousin from a small German court, and when they finally met 3 days ago in this very palace, 1 floor above your head, he took one look at her, turned to his aide, and said, loud enough for the room to hear it, "Harris, I am not well. Pray get me a glass of brandy." And the bride, left standing there in a strange country, in front of strangers, said of him afterward that he was very fat, and nothing like as handsome as his portrait. That was the courtship, the whole of it. And tonight is the wedding, and you are carrying the trays. The morning is water and fire and stairs. Every fireplace in the state apartments has to be laid, lit, fed, and made invisible. That last part is the trick. The fire must burn. The burning must never be witnessed. So you and Nan work the rooms in sequence ahead of the household's waking, hauling coal in leather-bound scuttles that weigh 30 pounds full, up the back stairs, through the doors that look like wall, across carpets you're forbidden to cross except on the drugget cloth laid down for exactly this purpose. You kneel at each grate, ash first, raked and shovelled into the pail, a soft grey breath of it rising into your face, settling on your lips, tasting of nothing and of everything. Then the laying. Paper, kindling split fine, small coal, large coal, built like a little city, and you have gotten good at this. You can lay a fire that catches on one strike, and there is a small, stupid, private pride in that which you keep hidden the way you keep everything hidden. Your hand screams every time you close it on the shovel. You close it on the shovel anyway. By 9, your knees have gone through the cold of the marble floors and out the other side into numbness. There is coal dust in the creases of your knuckles that will not come out until Sunday. There is ash in your powdered hair, and you'll have to be redone before the afternoon. And the second powdering always itches worse than the first. And while you kneel at the grate in the Queen's presence chamber, making fire for people who believe fire simply happens, you can hear the palace filling above and around you, like water coming into a ship, carriages in the courtyard, iron tyres on cobble, a grinding roll that never quite stops, trunks being carried, voices in German, because the Queen's household is thick with Germans, and voices in French, because everyone in this world half lives in French, and voices in that particular English drawl of the very grand, which manages to sound bored and dangerous at the same time, hammering somewhere where the last of the crimson benches are going into the Chapel Royal. A violinist, faint, 2 floors off, rehearsing the same 8 bars over and over until they stop being music and become a wall being built. And gossip. The house runs on coal, candles, and gossip. And today the gossip is running so hot it is a wonder the chimneys draw at all. In the corridor by the plate room, 2 of the Queen's chamber women, heads together. You slow your step exactly as much as a loaded tray allows. This is a skill too. A footman is furniture, and people talk in front of furniture. The Princess Caroline, they are saying. When she arrived at Greenwich on Sunday, the ladies sent to meet her were late. And do you know why they were late? Because Lady Jersey kept them waiting. Lady Jersey, who arranged her own appointment to the new princess's household. Lady Jersey, who is, and here the voices drop and you have to read lips, the prince's mistress, his mistress, appointed as his wife's lady of the bedchamber, riding in her carriage, choosing her clothes. On the road from Greenwich she made the princess change her dress, took away the blue she came in, and put her into white satin and a turban, and sat opposite her the whole way into London, watching her like a cat watching a bird it has already been promised. Think about what that means for a second, not for the lords, for the bride, 26 years old. She has left everything she knows. She speaks rough French and rougher English. She has crossed the North Sea in wartime with a British fleet escorting her past the French, and the first friendly face her new country shows her belongs to the woman who owns her husband, and the woman is smiling. Micro-cruelty. This whole house is built out of it, from the cellars up. The only difference between upstairs and downstairs is the price of the knife. You carry your tray on, face like a closed door. But you file it all away, because that is the other thing a footman is, an archive nobody knows they are writing in. At 10, Mr. Brand sends you across the courtyard to the Chapel Royal with a message for the sergeant of the vestry, and this is the errand that gives you your first sight of the day's actual machinery. The Chapel Royal is not big. That surprises people. It is a Tudor box, built for Henry VIII around 1540, panelled and painted with a ceiling of squares and crosses, said to be from a design by Holbein himself, blue and red and gold, low enough that the whole room feels like the inside of a jewelled chest, perhaps 90 feet by 30. This evening, the throne of the world's most powerful monarchy will process into a room smaller than a good barn, because that is how this country works. The power is bottomless, and the rooms are small and cold, and everyone pretends not to notice the draught. Inside, chaos with its coat brushed, men on ladders at the windows, the organ going in fits, the king's own musicians tuning, and crimson everywhere, benches, cushions, hangings, a red so deep and so freshly brushed it looks wet. You deliver your message. The sergeant of the vestry, sweating in black, takes it without looking at you, which is correct, which is how it should be, which still, 11 months in, puts a small cold coal of something in your chest that you do not have a name for, and had better never find one. On the way back across the court you stop, just for a breath. You are allowed one breath. Above you, St. James's Palace does its trick. It is not beautiful. It is old brick, dark red going brown, gatehouse towers from the 1530s with their clock and their crumbling crowns, chimneys everywhere, smoke standing up from 30 of them into a white April sky. Christopher Wren himself patched parts of this warren. Kings have died in it. Charles I slept here the night before they walked him across the park to have his head cut off, and took his last sacrament in that same small chapel where tonight a fat, frightened, furious prince will be married to a woman he cannot look at. That's not a story from a book. It is 146 years ago in the building you sleep in. The past in this place is not behind you, it is under your feet, and it is load-bearing. A gull comes over the gatehouse screaming, and somewhere beyond the wall London roars its low endless roar, and you pick your feet up and go back to work because the breath is over. And now the day begins to tilt, because at 11 o'clock word comes down the back stairs, hand to hand, mouth to ear, the way all real news travels in this house, that the Prince of Wales has been drinking since breakfast. Not wedding toast drinking, not a bracing glass, drinking with intent, drinking like a man bailing a sinking boat. He is at Carlton House, his own palace, a quarter-mile down Pall Mall, a building so expensive that Parliament has already had to rescue it once, and his gentlemen are reportedly trying to slow him down and reportedly failing. And one of the under-butlers who came up from Carlton House with the extra plate this morning says it plainly, flatly, the way you'd report weather. He was maudlin over the maraschino before 10, talking about Mrs. Fitzherbert. Mrs. Fitzherbert. Here is the trapdoor under this whole day, and almost nobody at tonight's ceremony will admit they can see it. 10 years ago, in 1785, the Prince of Wales secretly married a Catholic widow named Maria Fitzherbert in her own drawing-room with the curtains drawn, conducted by a clergyman who did it to get out of debtor's prison. Under the Royal Marriages Act of 1772, the marriage is legally void, because the king never consented. Under the Act of Settlement, marrying a Catholic would strike him from the succession entirely if the marriage were valid, which legally it is not, which spiritually, in the eyes of her church and in his worse hours his own, it very much is. So the man being married tonight believes, somewhere under the brandy, that he already has a wife. He has said so. This very week, they whisper, he told his brother William, "Tell Mrs. Fitzherbert she is the only woman I shall ever love." And then he put on his wedding clothes for someone else. So understand the geometry of tonight. In the chapel there will be a groom who thinks he is committing bigamy against the woman he loves, a bride who has already been told by Lady Jersey's own busy little hints exactly what she's married into, a mistress carrying the bride's fan, a king, George III, who arranged all of it, and around them, holding the candles, carrying the wine, opening the doors, standing against the walls with faces like closed doors, us, the people who see everything and are seen by no one. You will be in that supper room tonight, trays only, left side service, do not drop anything, noon. The pace below stairs goes from hard to violent. The plate room is unlocked, which happens perhaps a dozen times a year, and the gold comes out. Not gilt. Gold and silver gilt so heavy it might as well be ewers and chargers and epergnes, candelabra with 6 branches that take 2 men to lift, all of it carried up under the eye of the plate butler who counts every piece out loud twice and will count it back into night. Twice, because servants have been hanged on the word of a miscounted spoon before now, and everyone in this room knows a name or two. You carry a charger the size of a cartwheel hub, and the cold of the metal comes straight through Wither's glove into your burn, and for one white second the pain is so clean, so bright, that the room goes quiet around it. You do not stop walking. You have learned this. The body announces, and you decline to receive the message. There will be time to feel things in July. In the supper room, the table grows like something geological. Damask cloths ironed on the table itself. 2 women working the linen with irons heated at the fire. The smell of hot, clean cloth. A smell you privately love and will love for the rest of your life without ever telling anyone. Then the plate, then the porcelain, then the glasses, racks, and each one held up to the window, turned, breathed on, polished, set down without a sound. 300 covers. Each cover is a small city of objects, and every object has a fixed position, and Mr. Brand walks the table with a wooden rule. Actually a rule, measuring the distance from table edge to plate, and where it is wrong by half an inch he does not speak. He simply stops and looks, and the nearest man remakes it with his ears burning. By 2 o'clock your feet have stopped being feet and become information. Your calves ache in a deep, slow way, like cold water rising. The small of your back has a hot wire in it. The burn on your palm has settled into a rhythm, a heartbeat of its own, and you have made a kind of peace with it, the way you make peace with a bell that will not stop ringing. At 3 you are fed. Boiled beef, carrots, bread, small beer, standing, 11 minutes. It is good beef. You are, and this is the strange arithmetic of service, better fed than almost anyone you knew in Norfolk, better fed than your own father, who works land from dark to dark and sees meat on Sundays. You eat like a man loading a musket. Around you 14 footmen do the same, and nobody talks because everybody is listening to the house above, the way sailors listen to weather. And the house above is beginning to fill with silk. You hear it before you see it. Silk at scale as a sound, hundreds of yards of it moving on hundreds of bodies, a dry rushing whisper like wind in barley, laid over the tap of heels on marble, and the murmur and the first shrieks of laughter pitched high with nerves. The court is arriving, the drawing rooms are opening, diamonds are coming out of iron boxes all over the West End, and walking into this house on the necks of women whose grandmothers wore them at coronations. At 4, you're repowdered, re-inspected, and posted upstairs for the first time to stand in the grand corridor and open one half of one door. That is your entire function for the next 2 hours. You are one of 2 boys on one door. You watch the wall opposite. You open the door before anyone touches it, which means reading approaching intent out of the corner of your eye, the angle of a body, the gathering of a skirt, and you close it silently behind them. And between times you stand so still that ladies stop in front of you to check their faces in the mirror over your head, an arm's length from your eyes, adjusting a curl, biting colour into their lips, talking to each other as if you were the mirror's frame. This is how you learn what you learn. Standing still, being furniture. You learn that the prince, when he was told his bride had actually landed in England, went pale, they say, like a man hearing a diagnosis. You learn that the king is pleased with Caroline, finds her open and warm, and the queen is not, and says nothing, which in the queen's language is a paragraph. You learn that half the men in this corridor have money on how long the marriage will last. Not whether, how long. There is a book running at Brooks's. Someone has taken odds on a year. And at 5:15 you learn what a person looks like an hour before the worst evening of her life. Because the bride comes down the corridor. She's not what you expected, and you did not know you had expected anything until she is there and it is wrong. The prints in the shop windows made her a doll. She is not a doll. She is a fair, sturdy, quick-moving woman of 26 with a high colour in her cheeks and a way of looking directly at things which in this corridor, in this house, is so unusual that it reads almost as violence. Everyone here looks at things sideways. She looks at things, she looks at you. For half a second, passing, a boy holding a door, and she smiles, small, reflexive, the way you would smile at a child or a dog or a fellow prisoner, and says something to the lady beside her in fast bad French, and laughs too loudly, a laugh with a wire of panic in it that you can hear, because you have spent 11 months learning to hear what is under voices. And then she is past in a rustle of silver tissue, trailing attendants like a comet trails ice. And behind her, at the exact correct distance, dressed with a quiet perfection that costs more than loudness, comes Lady Jersey, Frances, Countess of Jersey. 42 years old, a grandmother, and the most dangerous woman in this building. Small, dark-eyed, exquisite. She's carrying something of the princess's, a shawl or a wrap, carrying it the way an executioner carries the axe on the way to the scaffold, ceremonially, patiently, in no hurry at all. As she passes your door, she is smiling at nothing. Your face is a closed door. You are furniture. But inside the furniture, a boy from Norfolk thinks, with sudden total clarity, I have seen this before, in the yard at home, a hen the other hens have decided about. Nothing has happened yet. Everything has been decided. You'll think about that little procession for the rest of your life. You don't know that yet. You just close the door. At 6, they pull you off the corridor and send you down, and the last machinery starts to turn. The chapel royal is lit. Hundreds of candles, wax, not tallow. Real wax at 3 shillings the pound, and the smell of it drifts all the way to the back stairs, honey and heat, the smell of money burning slowly. The procession is forming up. The officers of arms are in their tabards, gold and scarlet, stiff as playing cards. The yeomen of the guard line the way with their halberds. Out in the courtyard and up along Pall Mall and Cleveland Row, the crowd has been thickening since noon. Ordinary London, thousands of them, pressed against the rails in the April chill to see the coaches, and the sound of them comes over the roofs like surf, rising every time any carriage moves, falling back, rising. The King and Queen go over to the chapel first, and the shout that goes up for old George III is real, warm from the belly. Whatever London thinks of the son, it has decided to love the father. Then the peers, the ministers, the foreign envoys, the whole gilded payload of the state, filing across into that little Tudor box until it holds more concentrated power than any room in Europe. And then the wait, because the groom is late. You hear this the way you hear everything, through the walls, through the wine cellar, through Mr. Brand's absolute non-reaction, which is itself a broadside. 8 o'clock comes, 8 o'clock goes. The chapel sits, packed, candle-lit, cooking slowly in its own splendour. The bride waits in her apartments with her ladies and her silver tissue gown, and her heart doing whatever her heart is doing. And down Pall Mall at Carlton House, the first gentleman of Europe is being assembled by his people the way you'd assemble a cannon, braced, wadded, primed, pointed in the right direction. When he finally comes, you're posted at the foot of the back stair by the vestry passage with the salver, and so you see it. You're perhaps 15 feet away. You will be asked about this moment in kitchens and taverns for years, and you will always say less than you saw. The Prince of Wales in 1795 is 32 years old and weighs perhaps 17 stone, and he is poured into the full-dress uniform of a general, scarlet and gold lace, diamonds on the star on his chest, and he is magnificent the way a burning ship is magnificent. His face is flushed to a deep rose colour. His eyes are glazed and enormous. He is walking with the over-careful, over-smooth walk of a man negotiating with the floor, and on either side of him, not touching him, hovering the way you hover under a toppling stack of plates, are his unmarried brothers in arms for the evening, the Duke of Bedford and the Duke of Roxburgh, and their faces are doing the same thing your face does. Closed doors, both of them. Dukes and footmen, it turns out, get the same training in the end. As he passes, you smell him. That close. Maraschino and brandy, sweet and dark, laid over cologne, laid over sweat. A hot smell, a race-course smell. And he is talking. Low, continuous, to no one. You catch 4 words of it, and you will keep those 4 words like a coin sewn into a coat for the rest of your days, and tonight you will not repeat them even to Nan. What he says is, "It is no use." Then he has passed into the light of the chapel doors, and the trumpets take him, and the doors swallow him, and you are left in the passage with your salver and your heartbeat. The ceremony itself you get in fragments, through the vestry wall, standing in the dark with 2 other boys and the sergeant's assistant. All of you pretending you are posted there for a reason. The organ. Handel, they'll say later. The Archbishop of Canterbury's voice, dry and huge at once. The voice of a man lay in rails he knows the train will leave. The responses, muffled. A long, strange pause, early on, and you learn afterward what filled it. The prince, kneeling before the altar, rose to his feet in the middle of the prayers, stood up, actually stood, as if he meant to walk out of his own wedding, and the whole chapel stopped breathing, and the king, his father, got up from his place and went to him and spoke to him quietly, no one knows what, and the prince knelt back down. Think about that. In front of the massed peerage of England, the King of Great Britain had to physically go and put his son back into his own wedding, like a father putting a child back into bed. And there is a second pause, later, worse, that the whole room feels in its skin. The Archbishop reaches the part of the service where he asks whether any person knows of any lawful impediment. It is a formality. It is always a formality. And the Archbishop stops. He puts down the book, they say, and he looks up, and he looks at the prince, and he looks at the king, and the silence goes on 1 beat, 2 beats, 3, long past formality, out into open country, and inside that silence sits Maria Fitzherbert's drawing room, and a bought parson, and 10 years of secret, and every person in that chapel who matters knows exactly what the old man is asking with his eyes. No one says anything. Of course no one says anything. The book is picked back up. The rails continue. And when the Archbishop asks the groom whether he will love her, comfort her, honour and keep her, the Prince of Wales, by the account of every ear in the first 5 rows, answers in a voice thick with brandy and tears. He is crying. The groom is crying, and not in the way grooms cry. The bride's responses are clear. Give her that. Whatever is happening inside the silver tissue her voice holds. 26 years old in a foreign chapel, marrying a weeping drunk stranger in front of his mistress, and her voice holds. Yours would not have, mine would not have, hers held. The ring goes on, the register is signed. The guns begin. Out at the park and the tower, salute after salute rolling across London like doors slamming in heaven, and the bells of every church in the city answer them, and out beyond the walls the crowd roars, because as far as London knows, this is a love story with fireworks. And tonight every public house from Wapping to Chelsea will drink the health of the happy pair with genuine joy. They cannot see what you can see. That is the whole strange business of your position, distilled into one evening. The country celebrates a marriage. You have smelled the groom. Now the supper. Now your war. The procession comes back from the chapel through the staterooms, and below stairs the whole engine goes to full power at once. And from this point the evening stops being a sequence of events and becomes a single continuous physical act, like rowing, like harvest. The service runs on relays. Dishes come up from the kitchens on the backs of men moving at a controlled trot through the dark passages, and at the last door the dishes cross a frontier, from heat, noise, shouting, sweat, into candlelight, music, and total silence of effort. You are one of the frontier posts. You take laden trays at the door, turn and enter the world. The supper room is a furnace of light. Hundreds of wax candles doubling themselves in the gold plate, in the mirrors, in the diamonds, until the air itself seems slightly thickened, syrupy with brightness. The heat is astonishing. Within an hour the room is hotter than the kitchen, and the smell is layered the way the garret was layered, only inverted, wealth instead of poverty. Melted wax, roasted meats, orange flower water, hot silk, the civet and ambergris of 100 perfumes turning slowly ripe on 100 warming bodies, and under all of it, faint, persistent, human, the same bass note as the garret. They sweat too. Nobody says so. Everybody knows. You carry. Left side, as ordered. The trays begin at manageable and grow teeth as the night goes on. Silver-gilt dish of ortolans is nothing. A charged second course tray, sauce boats live and sliding, is a balancing act performed at shoulder height through a moving crowd, one-handed in effect, because your right hand is a liar reporting for duty, and every time weight rolls onto the burned palm, the pain comes up your arm like a struck bell. You learn its timing. You feed the tray to the left hand at every station. You breathe on the fours, down the room, turn at the epiphany, never between a lady and the light. And while your body does this, your eyes, trained furniture that they are, keep the ledger. The prince sits beside his new wife and does not look at her. He is drinking. Slowly now, steadily, with the terrible competence of long practice, and his colour is going from rose toward brick. When he speaks, it is across the table to his brothers, too loud, laughing at the wrong height. Once, only once in the whole supper that you witness, his head turns toward the princess, and something is said, and whatever it is, Lady Jersey, seated within reach the way a knife is kept within reach, smiles down at her plate. The princess eats. That detail. She is hungry, or she has decided to be, and she eats with a straightforward appetite that half the room finds charmingly natural, and the other half has already, by the sorbets, decided is German coarseness, and you watch the decision travel the table like a stain in cloth. Nothing is said. Fans move. Eyes meet. By midnight it will be established truth in 300 drawing rooms that the new Princess of Wales lacks delicacy, and no one will remember choosing to believe it. That is how it works up here. Downstairs, when they break you, at least somebody has to shout. The king is happy. It is the strangest sight at the table. George III, plain as a farmer among the peacocks, delighted with his new daughter, talking to her kindly at length, and she turns to him like a stove in a cold room. The queen sits straight-backed as a hinge, and watches her son destroy the evening one glass at a time, and lets nothing whatever reach her face. And you think, from your place against the wall, that is where he learned the drinking one way or the other, either from what she gives or from what she withholds. Past 11, the room begins to slur. Not the guests, the room itself. Candles guttering into their sockets and being changed by boys with snuffers and steady hands. The music thinning. The heat pressing everyone's finery down into damp. Your feet are two distant kingdoms sending occasional reports. The gilt tray's edge has printed a line of bruise across your left forearm that will last a week. Somewhere behind your eyes, the day's 16 hours are stacked like plates swaying. And then it comes, your moment, the one every servant has, eventually the one that decides what you are. You're clearing along the wall, close behind the principal table, when the Prince of Wales stands to drink somebody's health, sways, catches the chair back, misses, and takes half a step backward into the space where you are. 17 stone of future king coming at you like a felled tree, and you are holding a tray of crystal. There is no time to think, and you do not think. Your body, drilled by 11 months of doors and stairs and Mr. Brand's wooden rule, does 3 things in 1 second. The tray goes flat to the wall on your ruined right hand, which shrieks and holds. Your left shoulder comes up under the royal shoulder blade, not a push, never a push, a wall being helpfully located. And your face does the finest work of its young life. It becomes so perfectly, so absolutely nothing, that when the prince writes himself off you, blinking and turns half around to see what he struck, there is nothing there to have struck. Furniture. A boy-shaped absence holding glassware. For 1 heartbeat, the glazed royal eyes look directly into yours. He is this close, terribly young-looking under the fat and the flush, and what is in his eyes is not what you expected. Not arrogance, not even drunkenness exactly. It is the look of a man in deep water very far from land who has just realized that everyone on the shore is cheering. Then a duke laughs somewhere, and the eyes swim away, and the health is drunk, and it is over, and nobody saw except that everybody saw, and it does not matter, because you were not there. Not one glass rang. You count them with your ears as you walk to the door, not one. In the passage, out of the light, you set the tray down on the slab, and your right hand comes off the silver and will not close, and will not open either, and you stand in the dark shaking like a wet dog, and the pain arrives all at once, the whole account presented for payment, and you press the hand against the cold stone wall and breathe through your teeth. Behind you, from the doorway, Mr. Brown's voice, very quiet. I saw. You turn. He's a grey outline against the candlelight. Holding a bottle he's about to decant, and he looks at you for a long moment, longer than he has ever looked at you. 40 years, he says. I have caught 2 kings and a chancellor. Nobody remembers, because remembering is not the trade. The trade is that it never happened. A pause. You have hands, Rook. When the one heals, you'll pour, he goes. And you stand in the dark passage of St. James's Palace with a dead hand and £8 a year and no name that anyone upstairs will ever learn, and you feel for exactly as long as you allow yourself, which is 4 seconds, like a man who's been knighted. Then you pick up the next tray. The night does not end with the supper. Royal weddings do not end, they dissolve. Past midnight the company begins to drain by rank, coaches called in strict order of precedence, and every departure is its own small ceremony of cloaks and flambeaux and bows. And you're on the cloak relay now, running the back route between the corridor and the lower hall, and the cold of the night comes in through the opened doors in slabs, delicious for 10 seconds, then raw. Out in the courtyard the torches tear sideways in the wind. The crowd is still there, smaller, drunker, colder, but there, and every time the doors open they cheer at whatever comes out. A duchess, a bishop once to great delight, a footman with an armful of shawls, which is you, and for one absurd instant several hundred Londoners are cheering you, Thomas Rook of Norfolk, and you keep your closed-door face on, and something behind it grins like a harvest moon. And through all of it, one procession is being prepared that nobody cheers, because nobody sees it. The newly married couple being put to bed. The bedding of a royal couple is, by 1795, mostly stripped of its horrible old public ceremony, but the machinery of it still exists, the appointed rooms, the ladies to undress the bride, the gentlemen with the groom, and what actually happens that night travels through the palace walls before dawn, the way water finds cracks, because the pages talk to the chamberwomen, and the chamberwomen talk to the sempstress, and by 4 in the morning it is below stairs, complete, appalling, and you hear it standing at the small beer barrel with your shoes finely off, and it puts the whole gilded evening in its true light like a lantern uncovered in a cellar. The Prince of Wales, on his wedding night, was got to the bridal apartment so drunk that his gentlemen were half carrying him, and there, before his bride, in the last hours of the 8th of April, 1795, the heir to the throne of Great Britain and Ireland fell, and could not be got up, and spent his wedding night where he fell, in the fireplace, in the grate, under the mantle, in among the fender and the fire irons, his wedding finery in the small ash of a banked April fire, and his bride of 6 hours, the story says, and she herself will say it, in her own words years later, left him there where he fell, and went to bed. And you think of your own mourning, kneeling at grates, raking ash with a burned hand, making fire invisible for people who believe fire simply happens. He ended his wedding day in the one place in the palace you know better than anyone, the bottom of a fireplace. The country's first gentleman, £630,000 of debt, 10 years of a secret wife, 1 day of a public one, and it all drains at last into a cold grate, into the ash, into your territory. Some houses have ghosts. This one has a sense of humour, and it is not kind. You climb the 4 flights to the garret past 3 o'clock. Nan is already down, felled across his pallet, still half in livery. You get your coat onto its peg, because even now, even tonight, the coat comes first. The coat belongs to the crown, and then you lie down on the straw with your boots off, and your feet singing their long dumb song, and your right hand laid open on your chest like something you're keeping an eye on. Through the little window, London is still not asleep. Bonfires somewhere south, a glow on the clouds. A last rocket goes up from the direction of the river, a thin rising hiss you feel more than hear, and a soft distant crack, and the glow of it breathes once on the ceiling beams and dies. They are celebrating the wedding. Down there, in the streets, they will name babies after tonight. Caroline. There will be a whole crop of little Carolines by Christmas, poor girls, growing up alongside the truth as it slowly comes out. Because it will come out. You do not know the particulars yet lying in the dark, but you know the shape, the way you knew about the hen in the yard. This marriage has perhaps a year in it. It will produce exactly 1 child, a daughter, Princess Charlotte, born 9 months almost to the day from tonight, which tells you the marriage happened at least once, and the prince will write his will 3 days after that birth, and leave his wife 1 shilling, 1 single shilling, and everything else to his true and dear wife, Maria Fitzherbert. His words, and within a year of the wedding they will be separated in all but name, and the war between them will run for a quarter of a century, through pamphlets and parliaments and mobs, and at the very end in 1821, through a locked door at Westminster Abbey with the crowned king inside and Queen Caroline outside, hammering to be let into her own coronation, turned away at bayonet point, dead within the month. All of that is folded up inside tonight, the way the oak is folded up inside the acorn. You slept in the house the night it was planted, but that is the future. And the future is not your department. Your department is trays, coal, doors, and silence, and tomorrow it opens at 5:30. Your hand throbs, your feet ache. The garret smells of tallow and damp wool and Nan-spilled beer, and it smells for the first time in 11 months, and you notice this with the small shock, just as sleep takes the edges of things, like a place you come back to, not like a place you are enduring, like home, God help you. Morning comes for you at 5:30, the same as always, because a palace does not observe hangovers, not even royal ones. Your eyes open to darkness. For half a second you have forgotten everything, and then the hand reminds you, a deep hot pulse, and the whole of yesterday stands up in your memory at once like a crowd rising in a theatre. The bells are ringing. They are ringing everywhere, still special peals ordered for the marriage, and they will ring on and off for days, and every peal will land on the household of St. James's like rain on a funeral, because by 6 this morning everyone below stairs, everyone, from Mr. Brand down to the boy who turns the smallest spit, knows about the fireplace. Nobody says the word fireplace. That is the beautiful, terrible discipline of the house. What they say instead, passing on the stairs, over the bread, across the scouring troughs, is a whole invented weather of euphemism. His Highness was fatigued. His Highness passed an uneasy night. The apartments will want particular attention this morning, and once, from Long Meg, straight-faced, over the carrots, a single sentence that nearly kills 2 kitchen maids. I hear the grate in the state bedchamber draws very ill. You laugh into your beer, you cannot help it. Then you look up, and Mr. Brand is in the doorway, and the room drops into silence like a stone into a well. He does not scold. He never scolds. He stands there until the silence is finished spreading, and then he says, in the voice that never rises, "What this house sees, this house keeps. The man who forgets that had better also forget where he sleeps." And that is the end of laughing about the fireplace forever in this building. Out in London, the caricaturist will do it for you soon enough. Gilray and the print shops will draw this marriage until their plates wear out, and crowds will stand 3 deep at the windows in St. James's Street to laugh at the prince you caught with your own shoulder. But not here. Here the ash gets raked, the grate gets blacked, the fire irons get polished until they answer the candle, and if the housemaid who did that particular grate that particular morning ever told a living soul what she found or thought, no record of it survives, which means she was good at her work. You spend the day in the ordinary harness, coal, doors, trays. Your hand is inspected in the still room by the housekeeper, Mrs. Aylmer, a wide, silent Yorkshirewoman who dresses wounds, births cats, and once, they say, set the broken arm of an equerry who was too frightened of his colonel to see a surgeon. She unwinds the bandage and looks at the burn, which has broken and wept and stuck and torn, and she says nothing for a while, pressing round it with a thumb like a wooden spoon. You work the supper on this? Yes, ma'am. Carried? Yes, ma'am. She reaches for the honey pot, because honey is what she dresses burns with, and lint, and she binds it so cleanly that the pain drops by half before she is tied off, and while she works she delivers, without looking at you, the second lesson of your day. There's them upstairs born to be looked at, she says, and there's us, born to look. Looking's the better trade. You see the whole play. They only see the audience. She ties the knot. But mind this, boy. What we see goes into us. It has nowhere else to go. 40 years I've watched this family eat itself. You'll carry last night in you when you're 60. Choose careful what you stand near. She turns away to her jars. Conversation over. You flex the hand. It closes now most of the way. Choose careful what you stand near. You will disobey her for the rest of your life, of course. Nearness is the whole wage of this work. The money is nothing. The nearness is everything. Every servant in every great house in Europe is paid mostly in proximity, in the dark pleasure of standing 3 feet from history with your face closed, and the ones who say otherwise are lying, and Mrs. Aylmer knows it, which is why she said stand near and not stand away. She knows you cannot stand away. She's only telling you to plant your feet. The days after a great event in a great house are like the days after a flood in a valley. The water goes, and the shape of everything is quietly different. The married couple remove to Carlton House, the prince's own palace down the road, and then, within the week, out to Windsor and to a house at Kempshott, for what the newspapers, with straight faces, call the honeymoon, and what the servant stares, with straighter ones, call the campaign. Word travels back up the road faster than the couriers. The party at Kempshott, they say, is the prince's usual crew, his drinking men, his jockeys and captains, and Lady Jersey installed at the heart of it, and the bride the only other woman at the table, alone in a house full of her husband's roaring friends, and the men, being the prince's men, take their tone from the prince, and the tone is set. She will say, years later, of those weeks, that she was treated in ways she would not describe. You believe her. You saw the hen yard. At St. James's the tide of grandeur goes out and leaves the household on the mud cleaning. This is the part no one ever imagines, and it takes 9 days. 300 covers of plate, every piece washed in hot water and soap lees, dried at once. Because water is the enemy of silver, rubbed with soft leather, counted twice, aloud, and laid back into its baize nests in the plate room like relics into a crypt. You're on the counting for 2 of those days, calling numbers in the cold north light while the plate butler makes his marks, and there is a strange monkish peace in it. The weight of each dish, the cloth, the count, your voice and his pencil the only sounds, the gold going dark into its drawers for who knows how long, until the next wedding or the next funeral, whichever the family supplies first. The wax is harvested, every candle end from the wedding. Hundreds of pounds of good white wax is the property by ancient perquisite of the household, gathered, weighed and sold, and the money divided by custom among the staff, and your share, when it comes, is 4 shillings and 6pence, which is a week and a half's wages fallen out of the sky, and you sew it into the hem of your waistcoat with the rest of your hoard. 9 shillings now. The beginning of the mad, secret, load-bearing dream of every boy in your position, that one day, 20 years out, 30, there is a small public house, or a lodging house, or a shop with your name over the door, bought with candle ends. The crimson comes down out of the chapel royal. The benches go back. The little jewelled box returns to its ordinary quiet. Choir boys and Wednesdays, as if nothing had happened in it, and one afternoon, sent across with a message, you stand alone in it for a whole minute. Holbein's ceiling burns quietly overhead, blue and gold. The spring light comes in sideways. On this floor, Charles I knelt on the morning they killed him. On this floor, 11 days ago, his however many times great nephew stood up in the middle of his own wedding and had to be put back. You stand in the exact silence where both those things happened, 16 years old, holding a note about candle deliveries, and the hair goes up on your arms, and you understand for the first time in a way you can feel in your body what a country actually is. It is not the land. It is not even the people. It is a very small number of rooms, and the strange things families do in them, and the servants who sweep up after, generation upon generation, and never, ever tell. Then the sergeant's man takes your note without looking at you, and you go back across the courtyard, and the gull is on the gatehouse again, screaming at London, and London roars back. Now let me take you deeper into the machine you live in, because the wedding was one night, and you have 364 others, and it is the others that make you what you become. Consider water. You never thought about water in Norfolk. There was a well, and the well was the well. In this palace, water is an army. It comes in by pipe to the lower offices, tepid, doubtful, tasting faintly of the wooden mains it travelled through under the streets, and from those taps it is carried by hand in cans everywhere else, every basin in every bedchamber, every ewer, every bath, every scouring trough. A single lady's morning wash is 2 cans up 3 flights. A bath for a person of quality is 30 gallons, heated over the kitchen fire in coppers, carried up in relays at a jog so it arrives hot, poured, and then, an hour later, carried down again, cold and grey, the same weight in both directions, which is a joke water plays on servants, and has never once found less funny for the repetition. Your shoulders at 16 are already a waterman's shoulders. The yoke galls the same 2 places on your collarbones, and the skin there has gone smooth and hard, like the handle of an old tool, and some nights those two patches burn as if the cans were still hanging, and you lie in the dark feeling the ghost weight, the way sailors feel the sea in a bed ashore. Consider candles. Light in this house is a payroll. Wax for upstairs, tallow for down. Wax burns clean and white and costs 3 shillings the pound. Tallow gutters and stinks of the slaughterhouse it came from and cost 8 pence. And the frontier between the two kinds of flame is the exact frontier between the two kinds of people, drawn in fire on every landing, and nobody ever has to say so. Snuffing, trimming, replacing, and in the staterooms, doing it invisibly, mid-conversation, a boy at your elbow with the snuffer and the spare, working at the level of a conjurer while the wits of the age talk across him. You have snuffed a candle 9 inches from the face of Mr. Pitt, Prime Minister of Great Britain, while he explained something about the war to a bishop, and the Prime Minister's eyes crossed yours the way eyes cross a clock, checking the time. Nothing there. Consider the bells, not the church bells, the house bells, the wires that run inside the walls from every apartment down to the boards in the passages, each bell on its coiled spring with its painted name beneath, and the language of them, which you now speak better than French. A single pull, wanted. A double pull, wanted quick. The Queen's rooms ring with a lighter voice than the wardrobes. You could tell them blindfolded. You effectively are blindfolded, since the passage is black as a coal hole after dusk, and there is a particular horror known to every servant in every era, and never yet cured, of the bell that rings just as you have sat down for the first time in 9 hours, and the specific soft blasphemy that 14 footmen breathe in unison at that sound is, Mr. Brand says, the true anthem of England. Consider lust, the eating. Below stairs eats in strict order, at fixed hours, by rank, the upper servants in the steward's room with their own small ceremonies, wine, precedence. The housekeeper going in first on the steward's arm, a complete copy of upstairs performed nightly in a low-ceilinged room by the people who spend all day serving the original, and nobody finds this ridiculous but you, and you learn to stop finding it ridiculous because you begin to understand it. It is not mimicry, it is dignity, built from the only materials to hand. The world has decided that these people are furniture. Very well. In this room, for 1 hour, the furniture has a table of its own, and grace is said over it, and Mrs. Aylmer takes a chair like a duchess, because in the country below the stairs she is one. The summer of 1795 is Hungary. You should know that, sleeping or not, because it is the truth under everything else that year. The war with France is going badly and costing madly. The harvest of 94 was ruined. Bread is at famine prices, and while you carry ortolans, England outside the rails is rioting for flour. In the autumn, when the King drives to open Parliament, an enormous crowd will mob the state coach in the park, hissing, groaning, crying. Bread crying peace, and a window of the coach will be broken by a stone or somewhere a bullet, with the King inside it, and troops will clear the streets, and all of it happens within a 15-minute walk of your garret. You hear the roar of that crowd from the palace itself, a sound with a grain in it entirely unlike the wedding cheering, lower, older, and Mr. Brand hears you all listening and says to the room, in the voice that never rises, "That is the other family this house belongs to. Pray the two are never introduced." Nobody laughs. Across the water, 6 years back, a crowd with that exact voice walked into Versailles and walked the servants out with the masters. Every footman in Europe knows the sound now. It is in the trade. So when your Norfolk mother, who cannot write, has the rector send a letter asking, "Is London kind to you?" you sit over your reply a long time, penny in hand for the post, and what you finally send is, "I am well fed and well placed, and was in the room at the royal wedding," and you leave out the burn, and the fireplace, and the stone through the king's window, and the shape of the year, because the truth is a tray too heavy for one sheet of paper, and because I am well fed in 1795 in England is not a small sentence. It is the whole of your luck stated plainly. Most of the country cannot write it. In June you go up on the roof. It is not allowed exactly. It is not forbidden exactly either, which in the grammar of the house means it belongs to whoever gets there. Withers shows you the way one warm evening after the family has gone to Windsor and the house lies at half breath. Through the cistern loft above the garrets, out a low door with a wooden latch worn to silk by 2 centuries of thumbs, and onto the leads. The leads. The flat lead-sheeted valleys and walkways between the roof slopes, grey metal still holding the day's sun so that you feel the warmth of it come up through your stockinged feet. Initials scratched everywhere in the soft lead by generations of servants, dates going back before the Civil War, TC 1668, a crude ship, a gallows, somebody's sweetheart's name inside a heart weathered almost to nothing. Withers lights his pipe. You walk to the parapet behind the great Tudor chimneys, and London lies down in front of you. And for the second time in your life, the first was the chapel, your body understands something before your head does. The city goes to the edge of the world in every direction that matters. Smoke stands up from it in 10,000 columns, silver-brown in the evening light, leaning all one way like a field of some impossible crop. Eastward the abbey lifts its towers, honey-grey, and beyond it the river bends away, flashing between its roofs, thick with masts down toward the pool, so many masts they mesh into a winter forest. St. Paul's rides above the smoke like a moored moon. You can see kites, real kites, the birds, turning over the streets, and swifts in screaming packs round the chimney stacks, and southward, over the river, the hills of Surrey, and westward the park going soft and green into haze. Cows on it, actual cows, milked at the gates for a penny a cup, a countryside kept like a pet inside the biggest city the world has ever built. Somewhere under that smoke tonight is everyone, the prince at Windsor or Brighton, drinking against the clock of his own body, the princess, learning her cage, Mrs. Fitzherbert in her house at Marble Hill, 1 shilling's worth of Willoway, Lady Jersey smiling at nothing, Mr. Pitt with his war, the crowd with its hunger, Longmeg asleep over her baskets, your 9 shillings in your waistcoat hem, 700,000 people breathing in and out, and the tide coming up the river under all of it twice a day like a great slow lung. Best physic in the house, this, Withers says, tapping his pipe on the parapet. He is 9 years older than you, has been in service since he was 11, and has exactly one philosophy, which he now gives you entire. Down there, you're a pair of hands. Up here, you're a man having a smoke. A man wants 5 minutes a day of being the one who looks, else the looking at eats him. He spits comfortably into the gutter. That's all I know, and it's enough. You stand up there until the light goes and the lamps begin below, first the oil lamps of the streets in wavering strings, then window after window, thousands, the whole map of the city redrawing itself in small fires, and the bells come up to you from 20 steeples at once, blurred together by height into one slow bronze weather, and you think, with your feet warm on the lead, and your burn healed to a shining scar. Your grandfather's grandfather could have stood on an evening like this and seen almost this exact thing, and some boy not born will stand here when you are dust and see it again, changed and the same, and the thought does not make you feel small. That is the strange part. It makes you feel placed, set down, like a dish on Mr. Brand's table, at your measured distance from the edge, exactly where you go. You climb down when the stars come out. Your feet find the stairs in the dark without being asked. 11 months ago, this building was a labyrinth that meant to kill you. Now your body wears it like the livery. That could be you, the master said to no one in another story about another dream. Up on the leads you finally understand what your own version of the sentence is. Not the shop yet. Not the name over the door yet. Something smaller and nearer, and you say it to yourself once, silently, like sewing a coin into a hem. I was in the room, and I held. The seasons turn the great wheel once. Summer is the family away, and the house in canvas, chandeliers bagged like hanged men, carpets up, the long light days of scouring and painting, and the smells of lime wash and beeswax and vinegar, and the servants' hall almost merry with the cat away, almost, never quite, because Mr. Brand does not go to Windsor. Mr. Brand does not go anywhere. You suspect that if the house were emptied and locked, he would remain inside it, like the clock. Autumn is the return, the light dying earlier every day until you live by candle at both ends, the coal deliveries doubling, the black barges of it coming up to Whitehall stairs and the wagons from there, and your mornings sliding back into the old dark cold, kneeling at the grates. Only now you lay a fire faster than any boy in the wing, and Nan is the one who fumbles, because there is a boy greener than you now. There is always a boy greener than you eventually. A whole staircase of boys reaching back to Norfolk and forwards into the dark, and you hear yourself tell him, one frozen morning, when he is nearly crying over a fire that will not catch, it gets easier. And you hear whose voice you have caught the trick of, and you're not sure whether to be proud or afraid. Winter is the drawing rooms again, the state, the diamonds, the closed-door face, the chilblains, the hot wire in the back. Winter is also the news, coming up the road from Brighton and along the stairs from everywhere, that the Prince and Princess of Wales, married in April, are already living like a divided kingdom, separate tables, separate friends, letters instead of speech. Lady Jersey triumphant and hated is new, because London, the great crowd beast outside the rails, has read its papers and chosen its side, and its side is Caroline, the wronged wife. The plain-dealing German who eats with appetite and laughs too loud and is treated like a servant in her own marriage. When her coach is recognised in the streets, they cheer her now the way they cheered the old king. And when Lady Jersey's is recognised, other things happen. And this too is part of your education. The mob has a heart, and the heart has taste. And its taste is for the underdog. And the same is true below stairs, where the princess's few servants are treated at the second table like ambassadors from a suffering ally. And in the first week of January, 1796, the bells again. Guns from the park and the tower, and the bells and the criers. The Princess of Wales is delivered of a daughter, Charlotte, born at Carlton House on the 7th of January, 9 months almost to the night. Count it on your fingers. Everyone in England counts it on their fingers from the wedding you worked. Second in line to the throne of Great Britain, and the whole nation lights candles, and in the servants' hall there is actual cheering, real, unironic, because a baby is a baby even in this family, and Long Meg cries into the carrots, and Mrs. Aylmer permits herself half a glass of the steward's port. 3 days later, the prince, recovered from the celebrations, sits down and writes his will. Everything he possesses, every debt-soaked stick of it, to Maria Fitzherbert, my wife, the wife of my heart and soul, and to the mother of the 3-day-old future Queen of England in that same document, in his own hand, 1 shilling. 1 shilling. You have 4 of them and 6pence sewn into your waistcoat from the candle ends of his wedding. You are, by that measure, 4.5 times richer than the Princess of Wales. Mr. Brand hears that arithmetic passed down the supper table, and does not smile, because he does not smile, but he sets down his glass with a very slightly excessive care, which in the language of Mr. Brand is a man laughing until he weeps. Let me give you 1 more day before we let the year close. An ordinary one, because the wedding is what history keeps, but the ordinary days are what a life is actually made of, and if you are going to sleep inside this boy's skin, you should have 1 whole plain day of him, unhurried, nothing burning down, nothing famous. The 18th of February, 1796, say. A Thursday, cold rain, 5:30. Darkness, the smell in layers, the cold floor, the basin with its skin of ice broken by Wither's fist an hour before. Your hand has healed to a smooth pink oval in the palm that pulls a little when you spread the fingers wide, and you have stopped noticing it except in frost when it wakes and hums, and it is humming this morning. You dress by feel. The livery is cold, then slowly it is you. Down the stairs in the dark, hand on the rail, 3rd step, 2nd flight, avoided without thought. Bread, beer, stand in. The kitchen a red cave of firelight. The Frenchman already piping something onto a marble slab with his breath steamin'. Because pastry likes the cold, he says. Pastry is the only honest aristocrat. It works best in a cold room and falls in a hot one. Grates. 6 of them this morning. Your rounds redrawn since the newest boy took the small east rooms. Kneel. Rake. The soft grey breath of the ash. The little city of paper and kindling and coal. The strike. The catch. The first yellow tongue taken hold with a sound like a whispered word, and the 10 seconds you always give yourself, your 1 theft from the crown per fireplace, of watching it live before you fit the fender and vanish. In the Queen's presence chamber, the light is coming up grey in the tall windows, and the rain is running on the glass in long ropes, and the room stands empty and perfect around you. Gilt and damask and silence, like the inside of a state secret, and your brush and pail and your breathing are the only motion in it, and there are mornings. This is one, when the loneliness of that is so clean it is nearly happiness. Water. 14 cans before 10 o'clock. The yolk finding its 2 smooth places on your collarbones like a key finding its lock. Doors until noon, beef at 3, and in the afternoon an errand out, which is the prize of the week, a parcel of documents to carry to the Lord Chamberlain's man at the house in Whitehall, which means an hour sanctioned in the actual world. You go out through the Colour Court into Cleveland Row, and the city hits you like a wave, exactly as it did 11 months ago, the difference being that now you are a swimmer. The rain has thinned to a fine cold drizzle that beads on the wool of your greatcoat, Crown's greatcoat, and Pall Mall runs with mud and light, the shop windows blazing away their oil lamps at 2 in the afternoon against the gloom, princelers, hatters, wine merchants, a bookshop with the new caricatures in the window and a crowd in front of it laughing at, you check as you pass, yes, at the prince, always now at the prince. This one a monstrous swollen dandy picking his teeth beside a groaning dinner table, and no one in the wet laughing crowd knows or would believe that the boy easing past them in the dark greatcoat has caught that actual body with his actual shoulder. Chairmen jog past with a sedan crying, "By your leave, by your leave," their breath smoking. A ballad seller under a dripping awning is singing something mournful about a drowned sailor to a ring of maids. Two soldiers of the guards, scarlet gone dark with rain, argue about a horse. A crossing sweeper, a child, younger than the newest boy, sweeps you a path through the mud you are not going to ask him to sweep, walking backwards, grinning through the wet, and you give him a halfpenny because 11 months ago somebody's halfpenny was the difference in your own week, and he flips it, catches it, vanishes. Whitehall. The parcel handed over. A signature got. The world's business done with you. And because you have 20 minutes in hand and the discipline, by now, of a campaigner, you spend them deliberately. You walk down to the river, low tide. The Thames pulled back off its mud banks, grey-brown, running seaward fast with the rain in it. Gulls working the shingle, a pair of mudlarks, children again, bent double out on the flats, picking coal and iron and rope ends out of the ooze, up to their knees in February water, and beyond them the barges going down on the ebb, and beyond those the whole smoking city standing over its river the way the family stands over the household, fed by it, floated by it, never once looking down. You stand at the wall in the drizzle and let the cold river smell scour the palace out of your nose, tar and mud and salt and smoke, and you spend one of your minutes deliberately on Norfolk, your mother's kitchen, the fields under this same rain, your father hunched over the same weather, and you find, testing it the way you'd test the scar on your palm, that it aches but does not open. That is what becoming someone costs. The old ache seals over, and you carry it sealed. Then you walk back quick, because Mr. Brand's clock is in your legs now and forever, and you are through the gates with 4 minutes to spare, and the gatehouse clock strikes above you as you cross the colour court, and the sound goes down through you the way the Abbey bell did on your first morning, and the day folds you back into the house, doors, candles, trays, supper, the counting of the plate, the bolts, the last rounds, the garret, the dark. That is a day. There will be some thousands of them. Out of every 1,000, history will keep perhaps one, and you will keep 3 or 4 for yourself, the roof, the chapel, the shoulder, the river, and all the rest will melt together into that single, deep-worn stare of a word, service. And whether that is a sad thing or a safe thing is a question you will decide differently at 20, at 40, at 60, and never settle. And neither will I, and neither, if you're honest tonight in your own bed, will you? There is one more night from that first year that you keep, and since we are being honest with each other in the dark, you should have it too. It is the night, 3 weeks after the wedding, when you nearly lost everything, and no one ever knew, which is the only kind of nearly that counts in your trade. It begins with a bottle of the King's port. Understand the cellars first. The wine cellars of St. James's Run under the Western Range, brick-vaulted, cold as a well the whole year round. So cold your breath shows in July, and they are Mr. Brand's true kingdom, the one over which even the board of green cloth treads carefully. Bins by the 100, each with its chalked ledger, ports and clarets and hocks and the ancient sherries laid down under the second George that come up only for christenings and treaties. The keys, 3 of them, iron, live on Mr. Brand's own person, and the joke below stairs, told only in whispers, is that he sleeps with them inside him. like a swallowed anchor. 3 weeks after the wedding, you are trusted for the first time to go down with him and carry. The lantern light slides along the curved brick. The cold puts its hand flat on your face. The smell down there is like nowhere else in the building, deep and brown and quiet. Wet stone and old wood and the ghost of 100 years of seepage. A smell with a flaw to it, and your feet grit on the sand spread over the flags, and Mr. Brand moves down the aisles of bins the way the Archbishop moved through the service, a man among his rails. He draws 6 bottles for the morrow, wipes each, reads each, and hands each to you, and you bed them into the straw of the basket like infants. And then, at the foot of the stairs, going up, in the dark, with the lantern in his hand and the basket in yours, your heel finds the one hollowed step in the flight, the one your body has not yet learned, and turns. You do not fall. Falling would almost have been better. You lurch, and the basket swings, and one bottle rides up out of its straw like a salmon, and time does the thing it did at the supper, opens wide and slow, and you watch the bottle turn in the lantern light. The king's port, older than your father, worth more than your quarter's wages, turning in the air of Mr. Brand's own stairs 3 weeks after he saved your place, and your ruined right hand, the liar, the invalid, comes off the basket handle without being sent and takes it out of the air by the neck. The slap of glass into your scarred palm sounds like a pistol in the vault. Silence. The lantern does not waver. Mr. Brand has not turned round. He stands 2 steps above you, a grey back, a circle of light, and he lets the silence complete itself. And then he says, to the darkness in front of him, in the voice that never rises, "We will take that one to my pantry. It has travelled." And you climb the rest of the stairs behind him with your heart going like a smith's hammer. And in the pantry he sets out, unheard of, unimaginable, 2 glasses, his own and a small one, and he decants the travelled bottle with these hands that could fill a glass to a hair's width in the dark, and he pours you 2 fingers of the king's port and himself the same, and he does not toast, because toasting would make it an occasion, and occasions are remembered, and the whole art of Mr. Brand is that nothing is ever remembered. He simply drinks, so you drink. It is the finest thing you've ever had in your mouth, and you could not describe it then or now. Dark and warm and endless, like the cellar smell turned kind. A steady hand, he says, looking at the wine, not at you, is not born and is not trained either, whatever they tell you. It is decided. A man decides, some one particular time, that the thing in his hands matters more than the fright in his chest. After that he is steady. Before that he is luck. He turns the glass. You decided at the supper, tonight was only the proof. He finishes his port, rinses his own glass himself, which you will never see him do again, and says, "Good night, Rook." And that is the whole ceremony, the only medal your profession gives, and you go up the 4 flights not feeling the stairs at all. The bottle, entered in the ledger as breakage, is the single false line in 40 years of Mr. Brand's chalk. You know that now. You did not know it then. It is, when you finally understand it years later, the most extravagant gift anyone ever gives you. And here is the other half of that lesson, the dark half, because this house always teaches in pairs. That same spring, a boy is broken. Not you. A boy called Jem from the Prince's own establishment at Carlton House. 17, quick, well-liked, who is sent up one evening with a message and stays for a mug in the hall, and tells, because he is 17 and quick and well-liked and the table is laughing, a story about His Highness and a bathtub and a bet with Sir John Lade. It is a good story. It is probably even true. It goes round the table like fire in stubble, and it goes out of the room in somebody's pocket, no one ever learns whose, and up some stair. And within a month it is in a newspaper mangled, worse than the truth. And within 6 weeks there is an inquiry at Carlton House about servants' talk, and the inquiry needs a name, and inquiries always find a name, and the name it finds is Jem. No magistrate, no trial, nothing so clean. He's simply paid to the quarter and put out without a character, which is the phrase, without a character, and you should feel the full weight of it. A servant's character, his written reference, is his entire existence, passport, pedigree and purse in one. And a man put out of a royal household without one is not merely unemployed, he is unemployable, marked, finished in service everywhere the mark can travel, which is everywhere. They say he went for a soldier. They say a great many things. The table that laughed loudest at his story never mentions him again, and that silence, the speed and completeness of that silence, teaches you more about your world than Mr. Brand and Mrs. Aylmer and Withers all together. The house does not hate. The house does not even punish exactly. The house simply closes over a man like water and is smooth by supper. What this house sees, this house keeps. You thought, when Mr. Brand said it, that it was a rule. It is not a rule. It is a description of the only ground you have to stand on. Upstairs they are protected by birth, by law, by the guards at the gate. You are protected by one thing on this earth, that you can be trusted with what you see. The day that trust dies, you're not dismissed from a job. You're dismissed from existence. So you learn to carry secrets the way you carry trays. Level, close to the body, with a face like a closed door. You are 16, and you already know things that will not be printed for 30 years, and some that never will be, and you will die with those, an old man in another century, in a bed you own, in a house with your name on the deed, and the young people around that bed will say he was in service at the palaces in the old king's time. He never talked about it, and they will think that is a small, dull fact about you. It is the largest fact about you. It is the whole treasure, buried standing up. And because you should not go to sleep thinking this world was only cruelty in livery, let me give you the other side of the below-stairs ledger, the part the histories skip because happiness leaves no paperwork. There are the Sundays. Service at the Chapel Royal for the household, early, before the family's own hour, and the choir boys' voices going up into Holbein's ceiling like smoke going up a clean flue. And afterwards, if the rota loves you, a whole afternoon of your own. In summer you spend it in the park, which is free, which is the great secret of London, that its finest possession cost nothing. The long avenues, the cows, the milk warm from the udder at a penny the cup, the debtors and dukes walking the same gravel, and the birds on the canal, and you and Nan flat on your backs on the grass with your stocks loosened. 2 scarlet-coated boys among 10,000 Londoners, absolutely anonymous, absolutely free, watching the clouds go over toward Norfolk. There are the suppers after great days, when Mrs. Aylmer judges the house has earned it, and the long table gets a raised pie and extra beer, and Withers is made to do his imitation of the French pastry cook being introduced to English gravy, which never changes and never fails, and the newest boy laughs until he hiccups and has to be thumped. And for an hour the servants' hall is exactly what the word says, a hall with servants in it, warm, fed, off their feet, briefly and entirely a family, in a building otherwise devoted to a family that is not one. There is the pleasure of skill itself, which nobody warns you about and which becomes quietly the spine of your days, the fire that catches on one strike, the tray that crosses a crowded room like a gull crossing wind, the glass filled to a hair of the rim while your eyes are elsewhere. Because you can do it now, Mr. Bran kept his word. The hand healed and you pour. And the first evening you poured for the Queen's table, your hands were so steady you frightened yourself, and you understood at last what he meant on the cellar stairs. It was decided. You decided. Everything since has been proof, and there is the house at night, which belongs to you and your kind alone. The last rounds, past midnight, one candle, checking the shutters and the fires through the state-rooms where you are for 20 minutes. The only living soul among the mirrors and the dead king's portraits, and the portraits watch you the way portraits do, and you have stopped being afraid of them, and started. This is the strange part, nodding to one or two. Old Charles I on the great staircase, sad-eyed above his lace, who slept here his last night on earth. You nod to him most nights now. Two boys of the house, in your different ways, he would have been carried his washing water too. Nobody sane would call it an easy life. It is 16 hours a day of other people's weight, but easy and good are different words, and on the honest nights you admit it. The work fits you the way the stairs fit your feet. You were a boy nobody needed in a village with too many boys. Now a machine the size of a small town does not run right unless you're at the foot of the stairs by 6. There are lords upstairs, you have watched them across a year of card tables, who would trade their whole inheritance for 1 hour of being that necessary, and do not know it, and their not knowing it is half of what is wrong with them. That could be you, says the dream about the shop with your name over the door. But this is you, says the house, every morning at 6. And most mornings now that is not a sentence about a cage. It is a sentence about a place. There is a difference. It took you a year to learn it, and some men in silk upstairs will die without it. Now, one more turn of the lantern before the ending, because there is a room in this story we have walked past a dozen times and never entered, and you cannot truly understand the wedding night until you have stood in it. The bride's side of the wall. Come back to the 8th of April then one last time, but come the other way. Not up from the kitchens, down from the state apartments, along the corridor you held the door in, to the rooms where Caroline of Brunswick spent the hours before 8 o'clock, and where the chamber women, whose eyes are the only history that ever entered, saw what they saw and passed it, in time, down the stairs to you. She was dressed by candlelight in the late afternoon, and the dress is worth a moment of your mind's eye because the newspapers wrote it up in columns. Silver tissue, festooned with silver, laced with crepe, and over it a robe of ermine-lined velvet. The whole rig so heavy, mark this, so genuinely, physically heavy, that she could barely stand under it, and said so, laughing in her bad English, to ladies who did not laugh back. On her head, the nodding fantasy of white plumes, and on her breast so many diamonds, borrowed diamonds, crown diamonds, that the chamber women said you could not look at her straight when the candles caught. She was a bonfire, a chandelier walking, and inside all of it, remember, a woman 4 weeks off a wartime sea crossing, in a country whose language she half had, whose husband she had met 3 times, whose court had already, softly with smiles, closed against her. They said she talked too much while she was dressed. Of course she did. You have stood against enough walls now to translate that. Talking too much is what courage sounds like when it is alone. And they said one other thing, the chamber women, the thing that goes through you like the cold of the plate, that in the last hour when the dressing was done and there was nothing left to adjust and the room stood about her in that terrible finished readiness, she was cheerful, simply, doggedly cheerful, joking with her ladies in her mash of German and French and English while, a quarter-mile down Pall Mall, her bridegroom's people were hauling him off the maraschino and pouring him into his uniform. 2 dressing rooms, 1 street. In one of them, a man with everything, weeping and drinking because he must marry. In the other, a woman with nothing, not the language, not a friend within 400 miles, not even the loyalty of the lady carrying a fan joking. You may keep whichever of those 2 rooms you like as your picture of what bravery is. You know which one the house kept. She walked to the chapel between 2 bachelor dukes as custom demanded, under all that silver weight, and the ladies who bore her train said her step never faltered, and when she came past the yeomen and the officers and the massed candles into that small hot jewelled box full of people who had already decided about her, she looked, one witness wrote, gay and confident, and perhaps that was breeding, and perhaps it was ignorance of what precisely awaited her. But you stood 15 feet from what awaited her. You smelled what awaited her, and so you may be permitted your own verdict, which you will keep below stairs where it belongs. It was neither. It was the hen in the yard walking in with her head up because her head was her own, whatever else was about to happen, and the yard could decide what it liked. 26 years later, outside the Abbey doors with the bayonets levelled, she did the same thing, went from door to door with her head up while they shut England in her face. Some people get one character issued to them at birth and simply wear it out. She wore hers to the seam, and you, holding your door in the corridor that afternoon, got the half-second smile. Out of the whole of it, the diamonds and the dukes and the train-bearers, that is the piece that stayed. She was about to walk into the worst bargain in Europe, and she spent half a second of her last free hour smiling at a footman with a burned hand hidden in a borrowed glove. You never told anyone that. You're telling them now, in a manner of speaking, 2 centuries on in the dark to a stranger who is nearly asleep. Which is, when you think about it, exactly how the house would have wanted it done. Quietly, after the guests have gone. And since we have opened her door, open his. It is only fair, and fairness at bedtime is a kind of mercy, even to a man who wasted almost everything he was given. The Prince of Wales was not born a joke. That is the part the caricatures leave out, because caricature only works on the ruins of something. He was, by every account, the most beautiful royal child in Europe, and clever, genuinely clever, with real French, real Italian, a fine ear, a lovely singing voice, taste in painting and building that would in the end be the one debt England ever thanked him for. Because the man you caught with your shoulder would one day make Regent Street and remake Windsor and pile up the mad seaside dream of the Brighton Pavilion and fill the national collections with pictures, and if you want one sentence for him, the fairest ever written is this: he had every gift except the ones that matter, and he knew it, which was the punishment. His father raised him on a system. Old George III, the most dutiful, frugal, faithful, early-rising king the country ever had, brought up his heir on lesson hours and beatings and boiled mutton, sealed away from the world like preserves, and the result was exactly what that method always produces and never expects. A boy who, released at 18 with an establishment of his own, went off like a magazine struck by lightning. The drink, the tables, the racing, the women, the tailor's bills like a second national debt. All of it was, among other things, a 20-year argument with his father, conducted in the only language the son had ever been allowed to make his own, waste. And in the middle of all that noise, once, he loved somebody. That is the thing you keep coming back to on the leads, turning it over. Maria Fitzherbert was 6 years older, twice widowed, Catholic, entirely respectable, and entirely unattainable. And he pursued her through actual theatre, tears, a possibly staged stabbing of himself, until she fled abroad. And then he did the one brave thing of his entire life. He married her. Illegally, secretly, catastrophically, against the law, against the succession, against every interest he had, in a drawing room with the curtains drawn, because for one winter of his existence, the beautiful wasted man wanted a true thing more than he feared his father. It could not hold, of course. He was not built to carry a true thing up all those stairs. The debts became 630,000, and Parliament named its price, and the price was Caroline. And on the 3rd of April he sent his brother to Mrs. Fitzherbert with the message about the only woman he would ever love. And on the 8th he drank himself down to the waterline and was carried to chapel by 2 dukes, and stood up in the middle of his own wedding as if his body were trying, one last time, to bolt toward Marble Hill, and was put back by his father's hand, and wept through his vows, and finished the night in the ash. You caught him for 1 second that evening, the full weight of him, and looked into his eyes, and what you saw there you have never had better words for than the ones you found that night. A man in deep water very far from land who has just realized that everyone on the shore is cheering. They cheered for 35 more years. He drowned the whole time in full view in silk, and the shore never once stopped cheering, because that was its function, as catching was yours. And if there is a lesson in him for a boy with 11 shillings in a waistcoat hem, it is the one you took down off the roof with you and kept for life. Pity the man whom nobody is allowed to tell the truth. You at least had Mr. Brand. You're late, he said every morning to boys who were not late. It took you years to hear it right. It was not an accusation. It was an inoculation. Somebody in this world, it said, will always find you wanting. Hear it first from a man who will also teach you to be steady, and it loses its power forever. No one ever did the prince that favour. £630,000, and he could not buy one honest. You're late. £8 a year, and you got it free at 6 every morning with inspection. By that measure, too, you were the rich one. The house knew what it was doing when it put the gold upstairs and the wealth below. One honest note before we go on, because Henry tries not to lie to you even at midnight. The histories argue about every detail of that April night, as histories do. Whether the Archbishop truly paused so long at the impediment, whether the prince's tears were grief or brandy or both. Exactly how drunk 17 stone of him was by the vows. Caroline herself, years on, told her own version of the wedding night, the fireplace, where he fell, and I passed the night as I've told you, in her words more or less. And her enemies said she embroidered, and her friends said she softened, and the one thing no one on either side ever managed to claim was that it had been a happy evening. When every witness disagrees about everything except the unhappiness is the fact. Below stairs you learned that rule before you learned to pour. There is a last small scene from that first year, and then the ending, I promise, and it is the smallest scene of all, which is why I saved it. It is a wet November evening, 1795, 7 months married, and the Princess of Wales comes to St. James's for some function of the Queen's, briefly, unhappily heavily with child, and it falls to you by the plain accident of the rota. to stand at the foot of the garden stair with a lamp when her chair is called, because the yard is flooded at the usual door and the chairs are coming round the other way. So for 4 minutes, in the blowing wet dark, under the hiss of the lamp, it is you and the future Queen of England and nobody else at all. She stands in the shelter of the arch with her cloak gripped at the throat, and she is not a bonfire tonight. No diamonds, just a tired young woman far from home in the rain, and the child heavy in front of her, and the chair is late, and the wind pushes the lamp flame down to a blue bead and lets it up again, and you stand at the correct distance with your face like a closed door. And then she says, to the rain, or to you, there is no one else. It could be. In Brunswick also it rains like this. That is all. Bad English, flat, factual, immeasurably lonely. And every rule of your existence says a footman does not answer, is not spoken to, was not spoken to, and you hear yourself say, quietly, eyes front. In Norfolk also, Your Royal Highness. A silence. The rain. And then a short laugh. One syllable. Real. The wire of panic gone from it for once, and she says, then we are both foreigners here. And the chair comes swaying round the corner with its lanterns, and the men set it down, and she is carried away into the dark toward Carlton House, and the whole rest of her ruined, magnificent story. And you stand holding your lamp with your heart going, guilty and glad, having broken the deepest rule of your life for one sentence, and having been, for one sentence, not furniture. A person standing in the rain with another person. You never tell Mr. Brand. You suspect, on no evidence, that Mr. Brand has a sentence like that of his own, from some rainy evening 40 years back. Some king or queen or doomed minister. One exchange in a lifetime of silence buried standing up with all the rest. You suspect every old servant has one. It is the pension the trade actually pays. Then we are both foreigners here. You will say it to yourself in Norfolk Fields when you're old, and in the shop with your name over the door, and it will mean more things each decade, as the best sentences do. Everyone in that whole gilded, starving, warring, bell-mad London of 1795 was a foreigner somewhere, in a marriage, in a palace, in a body, in a century. And the whole secret history of the world is just people in doorways in the rain, admitting it to exactly one stranger, and then being carried on. Before we go down into the ending, let me tell you quietly at bedtime pace what happened to them all, because you have earned the whole story now, and because there is a strange comfort in endings, even hard ones. The way there is comfort in hearing rain you do not have to be out in. The marriage you watched lasted as a shared life about a year. By the spring of 1796, with the ink barely dry on little Charlotte's christening, the prince wrote to Caroline proposing in the politest imaginable language that they should have nothing more to do with each other, and she wrote back in her rough, clever English, agreeing and keeping his letter, which was a better move than anything his lawyers ever made. They lived apart ever after. She took a house at Blackheath and filled it with adopted foundlings and odd company and laughter pitched exactly as loud as she pleased. And when her enemies came for her, and they came for years, with spies and commissions and a thing actually called the delicate investigation, the crowds only loved her harder. 'Cause England has always kept a special tenderness for anyone its rulers try too obviously to crush. Lady Jersey's reign was short. Mistresses' reigns usually are. Wives can be endured, but a mistress must delight, and by 1798 she no longer delighted, and the prince went back for a while to the one he called his real wife. Maria Fitzherbert took him back too, after her church quietly told her that in the eyes of God she had never stopped being married to him, which must have been the coldest comfort ever issued in Latin. It did not last either. Nothing around that man lasted except the debts, the tailors, and the sadness. Little Charlotte, the baby whose birth set the bells ringing, grew up shuttled between her warring parents like a fortress both armies wanted, and became, despite everything, the hope of the whole country, a stormy, warm-hearted, wildly popular girl, and married for love, actual love, the one member of that family in 3 generations to manage it, and died at 21 in childbirth in 1817. And the nation grieved for her the way you grieve for the one lamp in a dark house. The shops closed for 2 weeks. Even the beggars, they said, wore black rags. Which is how, when old mad blind George III finally died in 1820, the drunk man you caught with your shoulder became King George IV, and the woman he left in the fireplace's room became, in law, his queen. And she came back from abroad to claim it, and London went into the streets for her, and the new king put her on trial before the House of Lords to be rid of her, and failed, the bill withdrawn, the mob triumphant, and then, in July 1821, came the coronation and the doors of Westminster Abbey, and Caroline of Brunswick outside them in her diamonds, going from entrance to entrance in front of the crowd, and at every door the bayonets, and at one of them a page slammed the door, they say, in her face. She stood there a moment, then she went back to her carriage. 19 days later she was dead, of an illness her doctors never properly named, at 53, and her funeral procession, which the government tried to route quietly around the edge of London, was seized by the crowd and forced, street by street, barricade by barricade, 2 people shot dead by the guards in the fighting, straight through the heart of the city, so that London itself, having been denied a coronation, gave her the only procession it had left. And on her coffin, at her own instruction, they fixed a plate with the words she chose, Caroline of Brunswick, the injured Queen of England. The king outlived her by 9 years, enormous, laudanum-soaked, hiding from the public that had once been promised the first gentleman of Europe. And when he died in 1830, the most respectable newspaper in the land wrote of him, in an obituary people quoted for a century, that there never was an individual less regretted by his fellow creatures. All that beauty, all that charm, all that waste. £630,000 of debt bought one unhappy woman a wedding, and the wedding bought one baby, and the baby was the only thing in the whole ledger that anyone ever loved. And Thomas Rooke? History does not keep footmen. There is no record of him because I made him for you, out of the hundreds of real boys who really did carry that plate, and lay those fires and stand against those walls, boys whose names survive, when they survive at all, in wage books, paid £8 per annum, and a line through it when they left. But the house kept their initials in the lead of the roof, and their spoon-worn hollows in the stairs, and everything you lived tonight, the water, the powder tax, the candle ends, the closed-door face, the bell wires in the walls, all of that is as real as the fireplace, and the fireplace, God help the man, is as real as the Abbey. Somewhere in that April night of 1795 there truly was a servant who found the heir to the British throne asleep in the grate, and truly said nothing, and truly went on with the morning. Whoever you were, this one was for you. Come back down now, back into the boy one last time, because we're going to put him to bed, and you with him. It is late in the spring of 1796, a soft night, the first truly soft night of the year, The house has dined and been bolted. The plate is counted twice and sleeping in its bays. The last candle rounds are done, and the passages stand black and warm, ticking faintly as the day's heat leaves the stone. You climb the 4 flights slowly, for once, because there is no one behind you and nothing left undone. Your legs are heavy in the good way, the paid way. Your hands smell of candle smoke and leather and the vinegar of the polishing cloths, and under that faintly of honey, because Mrs. Aylmer dressed a new burn on the newest boy this evening, and you held the lint for her, and she let you tie the knot and looked at your knot and said nothing, which from Mrs. Aylmer is a diploma. The garret is warm tonight. The little window stands propped with a stub of wood, and the London night comes through it gently. Distant wheels, a dog, a watchman far off crying the hour and all's well in a voice like a rocked boat, someone singing drunk and happy somewhere down toward the park, 3 streets of quiet, and then the singing again, fainter. Nan breathes slow and even. The newest boy has stopped whimpering in his sleep finally this last month. He is learning. It gets easier. You told him so, and it was true. You lie down on the straw and it takes your shape and you take its. The blanket is thin, but the night is kind. Your feet throb once, twice, and let go. The scar in your palm is quiet. The 2 smooth places on your collarbones are quiet. All the small paid-off debts of the body, settling one by one like the house. You think, drifting, of the year. The tray held flat against the wall. The chapel's painted ceiling. The princess's half-second smile at a boy holding a door. The king's guns rolling over the roofs. The candle ends turned to shillings in your hem, 11 of them now. The ash and the honey and the yolk and the rain and the river at low tide, and the view from the leads with the whole smoking world laid out, and yourself set down in it, at a measured distance from the edge, exactly where you go. You are warm enough, fed enough, safe enough. You have a roof and work that matters, and people who will notice if you're not at the foot of the stairs by 6, which, say what you like, is more than most souls in this city can claim tonight. That's more than the boy who stepped off the Norfolk wagon dared to want. That's enough. The sounds of the city grow fainter, or maybe you're just listening less. Somewhere out there the palaces and the taverns are burning their different candles down. The watermen are sleeping under their boats. The mudlarks are sleeping wherever mudlarks sleep. The king is sleeping his troubled sleep at Windsor, and the prince his heavy one at Carlton House, and the princess her stubborn one at Blackheath, and the baby who will be England's darling is sleeping in a cradle with 2 empires' worth of trouble, waiting politely for her to grow, and none of it, not 1 ounce of it, is yours to carry until 5:30. Let it go then. Let the bells hand the hours to the watchman, and the watchman hand them to the river, and the river carry them down to the sea. Let the great house tick and settle over your head, beam by beam, the way it has settled over sleeping servants for 250 years. Let your thoughts slow and soften and lose their edges, the way the fire loses its edges in the banked grate, going from flame to glow to warmth to memory. Tomorrow there will be ash to rake. Tomorrow there will be water to carry. Tomorrow there will be doors and bells, and Mr. Brand saying you're late to 14 boys who are not late. But that's tomorrow. Right now there is only this, the straw, the blanket, the propped window, the soft air of the first kind night of the year moving over your face like a hand. Centuries will pass. The palace you sleep in will still be standing, when everything around it has changed beyond recognition. The courts will empty, the powder and the sedan chairs and the link boys will vanish. The bells in the walls will fall silent and be left there, wires and all curiosities behind the panelling. The city below your window will grow until it swallows the horizon, and light itself will change, and the streets you carried parcels through will fill with machines no one in your world could dream. But people will still live there, still work too hard and stand too long, and hide their hurt hands from their masters, still climb the stairs at midnight with singing feet, still steal 5 minutes on a roof to be the one who looks, still lie down at the end of long days in small rooms, listening to a city breathe, wondering what tomorrow will ask of them. Some things don't change. The tired body doesn't change. The need, at the end of it all, for one safe dark hour with the door shut and the work done, that doesn't change either. So let it come. Let sleep take you the way it took Thomas Rooke in his garret above the colour court, 231 years ago tonight. Let the world fade. Let the noise quiet. Let your thoughts slow and soften and finally stop. You've earned this rest. You were in the room and you held. Take it and dream of whatever dreams may come. Good night.